Do you know that coffee in corporations is better than a coffee in judiciary?
I believe it is. I think, is that Pierre? Is that Pierre that's got to get up to speed?
The other guy. Okay, we're not quite there yet according to my clock. Senator Baldwin, why don't you come on up?
Good morning. Are you ready? Okay. If you're ready, I'm going to go ahead and bring Mr. Matthews up, our state fire marshal.
Okay, we still can't start for,
Okay, I'll wait.
it's just
The official signal.
the official. Seems like forever, but we talk very slowly. Okay, let's call the meeting to order. The first bill for our consideration is House Bill 64, Fire Prevention and Electrical Safety Amendments, sponsored by Larson, Sherwood, and our own Senator Baldwin. Senator Baldwin, would you like to help us with this bill?
I would love to. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and committee. I want to see more smiling faces.
Is your mic on, sir?
It is it not?
You've got one of those droopy tips.
It's on. Is that better?
There, that's much better.
I'll just hold it really close.
Okay.
Thank you for hearing this bill, committee. This bill is House Bill 64, Fire Prevention and Electrical Safety Amendments. Generally a pretty straightforward bill. The impetus for this bill is a decrease in the revenue from the Department of Electrical and Fire Safety. With me here, I have Byron Matthews with the office. He's the state fire marshal. In the historical sense, in the past, electrical fees have been gone into the department 60%, 40%. And that means 60% went to the department. The other 40% went to the general fund. If you look, I think, did you guys get the table? It's on its way. Okay, it's on its way. But there's a table, the trajectory for what's going to happen is if we stay at that 60-40 split, is eventually the department is going to go underwater. And the table you'll get demonstrates that by 27-28 will be $366,000 in the hole. The proposal of the bill is twofold. Number one is to change that split. There's no revenue change. It just changes that from a 60-40 split to a 90 or 95-5 split, where 95% will go back to the department and 5% will go to the general funds, but it has zero effect on the general budget or on the revenue of the state. The intention being, and when you see the table, you'll see that with that trajectory, in 27-28, we will be $731,000 in the good. The net effect of that is we use this fund to pay for our electrical inspectors. And without that fund, we will likely not be able to have those inspectors. We'll not be able to perform the inspections and do the duties that is expected of this office. The second purpose of the bill is just to do some clarifying language of what qualifications are for the electrical inspectors. If you look on, I believe, page 2 of the bill, or actually on page 3 of the bill, just some clarifying language there on lines 8 through 14 about what the licensing of an electrical inspector involves. And probably Byron can speak a little bit more to that and explain the necessity of it. It's just a simple clarification. But the big purpose of this bill is to change that split from a 60-40 to a 95-5 to keep the department viable without having to come back and ask for a increased expenditure on the budget. This will take care of it itself, at least for the near future. At some point down the road, perhaps by 29-30 or beyond, there will be a need. We're going to have to look deeper. But this keeps us viable until 27-28, which is very important, without an ask of the general fund or of the budget. I would stand for any questions, and perhaps Byron could present more to you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, any questions for Senator Baldwin at this time? No? Go ahead and introduce yourself, sir, and tell us. Go ahead.
Morning, Chairman Case, members of the committee. Byron Matthews, otherwise known as the Wyoming State Fire Marshal or the Director of Fire Prevention and Electrical Safety. Good senator covered the bill and the clarity in that. And And what we talk about is by statute, that fund is set to fund those additional electrical inspectors, and make sure that we keep those electrical inspectors out in the field. And then the clarity that he talked about in letters A and B, effective, that's been the law of the land for a very long time, but it was a little confusing in the way it was previously written. So working with the good representatives, we clarified that to identify the certification from the International Code Council, as well as the license in the state to operate as an electrician. So with that, I would stand for any questions.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Matthews? Any questions? Senator Scott? Let's get Senator Scott's little green light. There we go.
Mr. Chairman, am I right in thinking that all the electrical inspectors in the state are in this, with the state fire marshal's office, and the cities don't have their own electrical inspection?
Mr. Matthews?
Chairman Case. Sir, we do have electrical inspectors in the state. There are locals that also have electrical inspectors on staff. So different counties, cities, municipalities do have electrical inspectors, and that's that clarity that's outlined in that subsection.
Okay. Anybody else? Senator Barlow?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the worksheet, I guess you'd call it. One of the things that I see at the very bottom is a little couple of sentences about fees, and certainly that's within your purview, is to adjust the fees. So how have fees been adjusted, let's say just in the last 10 or 15 years, to maybe account for some of this revenue issue? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Matthews?
Chairman Case, Senator Barlow. We have not adjusted fees as those are capped by legislation, and it has not been the pleasure to raise those fees. We've brought two pieces of legislation previously to raise that fee cap. So we're before you today to change the split because there just hasn't been the temperament to change those fees.
Senator Barlow?
Mr. Chairman, if you could, do you have the citation for the cap, please? And if it's not here, that's fine, we'll do it later, but I appreciate that, thank you.
Mr. Matthews?
Chairman Case, Senator Barlow, I will get that to the committee so you can see that, sir.
Anybody else? Mr. Matthews, I recall, I'm a general contractor, so when I build a building and submit plans to our local building office, they get forwarded to your office and then there's a plan review fee. Does that still occur?
Chairman Case, yes, there are certain circumstances where the locals choose to use the state as either their plan review or their electrical inspector or both. So in certain circumstances, we'll talk about this county that we happen to be sitting in, they choose to do that for fire code. So the local jurisdiction takes all of the rest of the codes, excluding the fire code, and they ask the state for assistance on that fire code.
And Mr. Matthews, that plan review fee, that goes to your office, and is that in addition to the fees that we're talking about in this bill?
Chairman, there are fees associated with that plan review. I'm looking at that legislation so I quote it correctly. So there's two fee accounts. There's an electrical fee account and there's the fire review fee account. So what we're addressing here is the electrical portion of that fee.
So is that where the 60-40 split is now, is the electrical portion? What happens in the fire review portion, and how come we're not doing something similar there? Back to you, sir.
Chairman Case, so yes, this is the electrical side of the house only. Currently, the fire fees and all additional fees collected by the agency go directly to the general fund. And
just to finally, so you didn't seek a way to get more revenue for the department by going after those fees?
What we're looking, Chairman Case, in this particular instance, we're looking to make sure that we protect the imminent risk as outlined in that handout that we provided is those electrical inspector. So yes, we chose to specifically address that at this time to make sure that we insure those employees and we ensure those services are delivered to our constituency.
Right. Anybody else?
Senator Landon. So real quickly then, how many of these inspectors do we have and tracking the financing that would occur if we go 95.5? I thought I heard that allowed you to get some more inspectors, but is this primarily to take care of the inspectors we already have? Talk to me about that.
Back to you,
Chairman
Mr.
Case,
Matthews.
Senator Landon, yes, so in the enabling legislation, it does talk about additional electrical inspectors. Currently with the fees and the split, even with the updated split, that allows us to maintain. We don't currently have the ability with the fee cap to allow us to put additional staff to work.
Anything? Senator Bowen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So it looks like we have a short-term fix here. I was just wondering if you had ever discussed having some sort of sunset on this revenue diversion away from the general fund. It was discussed at all, so we can, so it buys us time, maybe until 2029 or even shorter, to find another more sustainable solution.
Mr. Matthews.
Chairman Case, Senator, no, we had not talked about a sunset. Do appreciate that dialogue, but yeah, we hadn't talked about that.
Okay. Anybody else for these gentlemen? Thank you, gentlemen. Who else would like to address the committee on this bill? Who else in the room would like to address the committee on this bill? How about the fellow behind the pillar? I see some movement. Come on up, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Jim Wamsley. I'm the fire chief for the city of Rock Springs. I'm also the second vice president for the Wyoming Fire Chiefs Association. I'm just here to speak in favor of this bill. It will allow for the continuity of safety and inspection of electrical installations within the state. The Wyoming Fire Chief supports this bill.
And would you mind saying your name again, sir? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's Jim Wamsley.
Wamsler? How do you spell that?
Wamsley.
Okay, Wamsley. Thank you, sir.
Thank
Any
you.
questions for Mr. Wamsley? Any questions? Thank you very much, sir. Anybody else in the room like to address the committee on House Bill 64? Is there anybody online? Nobody online? Committee, you've heard testimony. What is your pleasure? Got a motion by Landon. Discussion? Any discussion? Senator Landon.
So just a quick piece of discussion, Mr. Chairman. I don't understand all I know about this inspection piece, but I do know that having been through a project the last couple of years, I've actually visited with some of our electricians who feel like they have to jump through quite a few hoops. We've got local inspectors, we've got state inspectors, we've got codes, we've got ordinances, so I've got a lot to learn on this front, is all I'm saying. This one seems fair. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? And Senator Landon, I don't know how it works everywhere, but in Lander previously, we always had a licensed electrician as our chief building inspector, and that worked really well. But that's not true anymore, and I don't know what the typical practice is, but so you have to have the electrical component. It is important for fire safety, believe me. Very rarely does a plumbing thing catch your building on fire, but it can, venting and stuff. Anyway,
You've never seen me sweat a pipe.
I'm thinking your recent experience has to do with a very large honeydew, maybe. Okay. Are there any offering of any amendments on the bill? Senator Boulder.
Well, we'll see if this works or not, Mr. Chairman.
Go right ahead.
We heard that this was sort of a temporary fix. I just want to make sure that, we're not permanently diverting general funds towards something that I think would be a classic example of being supported by fees. And so I have a conceptual amendment that would make this split, this amended split only effective until July 1st, 2027.
So basically what you do is sunset this act or just the fee portion of this act?
Just the fee portion, July 1st, 2027.
So you'd want to put it comes under, you have to be careful on a sunset that you don't make the whole the section disappear. You
Right.
just want to disappear, it might be better, to be more precise, you might add, perhaps it's adding a C, but under 35.9, 129, the B, the fee section, you could add a C section that says, after you pick the date, it'll revert back to 60/40.
I'm sure, and I mean, I hope we have the leeway to let staff make, I think it's.
Well,
something
thank
of a
God we do,
concept.
yes.
And what I was thinking, oftentimes we see in the budget, for fiscal years, whatever, 25, 26, 27, this will be the fee, and it'll remain
Well,
60/40 for the rest of it.
I think that's achievable, structure-wise. I'm looking at Ms. Delia. She's nodding her head. So,
Yeah, we did.
so that's a motion, conceptual motion, discussion. Senator Scott?
Mr. Chairman, July 1st, 2027, so that it can be dealt with in that general session.
Yeah, correct. That gives us plenty of leeway, and nothing magic about that number, except that's when it's scheduled to run out. So we'll make sure that doesn't happen. But yeah, it gives us plenty of time to come up with a more permanent solution. And it holds our feet to the fire too, the legislature's feet to the fire, to make sure that we do in fact address it, not just kick the can until 2032 or whatever the new date is where the whole thing goes bankrupt.
And Senator Boner, you're persuaded that, these are fees for work that the department essentially does. And so you're persuaded that they need to keep sharing some of that money after 27?
Right, yeah.
They need to return to the present system where, okay,
Yeah, I think it's an acknowledgement that this is a statewide system. This is different from a local contracting license. It's the only statewide system for contractors. I see their budget come across our desk every year or two. So
okay.
yeah, there is a state nexus here when the general fund is appropriate.
Anybody else? Question, Senator Barlow?
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I actually found the fee part, so it's actually the beginning. It's part of the sections of these bills, and we're talking about 400, 200, 200, 200, 1, 1, 1, 1, 5, 50, $320, and numerous fees. I guess my belief is that I don't think there's gonna be much appetite anytime to go in and start trying to figure out what to charge, what fees and what to change, because these are statutorily laid out. So I'm not gonna be supportive of the amendment. I'm supportive of, this is a way that they stay off the general fund, because that's what we're gonna be doing next. If we don't pass this bill, they're gonna be coming back saying, we need money from the general fund. So I'd much rather be fee-based, based on where they are. And the 95.5, I think that's, I don't know why we even care about 5% coming in the general fund, to be quite candid, in my view. So I'm not gonna support this amendment, and fine with the bill as it is, just because of the fee schedule that we'd have to deal with in statute in 3 years.
Anybody else? Senator Bonner, did you want to respond, or?
Well, like I said, Mr. Chairman, this is the only type of contractor work that is regulated by the state. I think it's appropriate to have sub-general funds, so we'll just vote.
Okay, well, so the amendment is conceptually to change the fee structure back to the existing one in January 1st, 2027. July 1st, 2027. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I heard Boner and I heard Scott. Let's hear the noes.
No.
And Case will be a no, so good shot, though. Anything else on the bill? Anything else on the bill? Is there any feeling about the need for this to go to appropriations? Did it go to appropriations in the House? It did. What do you guys think?
Mr. Chairman, I was wondering the same thing. It's a transfer, just changing that funding stream probably is at least an awareness thing. I think it would be kind of up to the chairman. Might be all right to let our appropriators know what we're doing with those fees, but
if we did send it to appropriations, there's lots of time. I mean, you know, so, how do you feel about that, Senator Baldwin? Come on up, and do you mind using the microphone?
Charlie didn't think so.
Chairman Case, I don't believe it'll make a huge difference. I would flip a coin. I don't, you know, I had a similar bill with a similar thing that I talked over with the chairman of appropriations. I talked over with our chief clerk, and the decision was made to not refer to appropriations, but either way would be fine.
Okay, Senator Scott, you had some input?
Mr. Chairman, yeah, I wouldn't bother because there's no amendment they can make to it. Nothing they can do to it. There's no appropriation in here. We do need to educate them a bit and do that on the floor.
I think it's gonna be a long haul to try to educate a member of the appropriations. I'm teasing. All right, I'm persuaded. Thank you very much. Thank you, Senator Baldwin. Anything else on the bill? How about calling the roll on the bill, please?
Senator Barlow? Aye. Senator Bonner?
Aye.
Senator Langdon? Aye. Senator Scott?
Aye.
And Mr. Chairman,
Aye.
we have a total of 5 ayes and 0 noes.
Thank you, Senator Baldwin. That'll be yours on the floor. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 126. Childcare is a residential use of property, sponsored by Representative Yen and others. Welcome, Representative Yen.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Would you like me to present the bill?
I would like you to do everything.
I can only do so much, Mr. Chairman, but I will let you know what the bill does. It's basically a very simple little bill, I think, as my former Speaker Harshman would say. It's a one-pager. It's going into the decision of what kind of bills that I wanted to bring forth and run. I thought childcare is one that both helps our workforce and is a strong need for basically the entire state. We have a lack of it around the entire state. So I was trying to find solutions that would work. And I've learned that this becomes an impairment, frankly, in establishing a home-based childcare in many parts of the state. So HOAs around the state often have a restriction against commercial use of the property. And this is really a clarity, so it's unambiguous to anyone who wants to open a home-based daycare that childcare is a residential use of property and not a commercial use of property. I think the real impetus here is, you know, if you have a bunch of moms in a neighborhood and they want to start a daycare in one of their homes so they can take care of the rest of the kids in the neighborhood, sometimes you'll have this impetus where they're not sure whether or not they can actually open it based on the situation in their covenants. And so, again, all this bill does is provide clarity. The one part that I think I remember from last year was Representative Heiner brought a bill to allow 3 to 8 kids for a home-based daycare without license. And even though that doesn't have to let you go through the bureaucracy of getting Department of Family Services license, it could still be stopped by an HOA covenant where they're not sure whether they're allowed to have it or not. And briefly, I'll talk about what happened on the House side. So in House committee, we reduced the number from 15 to 10. To talk about that number, so in Department of Family Services licensing, 15 is the maximum amount of kids that you can have in any licensed daycare. That 15 requirement requires you to have at least 1 employee for that ratio of employees to kids. 10 is the threshold where you don't need any additional employees. So the idea was that if you don't need any additional employees, it's less likely for someone to consider it a business. And that provides that additional line of not having additional traffic, and there were concerns around that. And then so those are the 3 levels. There's unlicensed, 3 to 8. There's 0 to 10 licensed, and then there's to 15 licensed, but with an employee. And then greater than that, it can't be in a home. It has to be outside of a home. And the other part that was changed in the House was on third reading, Section 2 was changed, so it only applied to covenants on residential property adopted after July 1st, 2024. The effect of that is that it basically wouldn't apply to most of the state, and it would only apply to new development that didn't have any covenant on it. And so that's the bill, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Senator Yen? I didn't know he was working as part of the Regulatory Reduction Task Force, do you know? Senator Scott?
Mr. Chairman, so we could perfectly well take Section 2 out again and make the bill much more effective.
Representative Yen?
Mr. Chairman, that is entirely your prerogative. I did vote no on it. It was a pretty close vote in the House for that particular amendment.
Back to the committee, Senator Boner.
So, Mr. Chairman, just a little bit more discussion along those lines, and I can certainly understand that it sounds like there's a pressing need now, and usually we don't make things retroactive, especially, say, in criminal law, but in this case, it's clarifying. What was the argument for not making it retroactive, I guess? Why did the House decide what it did, I guess?
Representative Yen?
So the argument by the bringer of the amendment, and I don't want to put too many words in his mouth, but I think it was essentially that you would be abrogating existing contract between two parties with the thought that they had, that it would restrict childcare when they thought of that commercial covenant. I disagreed with that. I didn't think that childcare really came into the mind of someone when they were putting in those covenants, but the House disagreed on a close vote.
Senator Barlow?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I know there's other folks here that represent realtors, et cetera. Was there any indication as you heard this bill through in the committee and through your deliberations of the House, that there are a number of these HOAs that have restrictions specifically to childcare, or is it business, or how is that being, what would be impacting contractually specifically with this? Are there actually indications that this is prohibited in some of these HOAs or whatever those are? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Yen?
Thank you, Mr.
Representative
Chairman.
Yen?
Senator Barlow, I think the realtors can answer that because they did do some research on it. There are some specific covenants to childcare, and usually it's to allow childcare. For the most part, there are many HOAs with covenants that disallow any commercial use, but have no clarifying language around childcare at all.
All right. Thank you. Stand by. Well, let's hear from the testimony. I expect there'll be quite a bit. Who would like to testify on this bill? Yes, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Senators. My name is Roxanne O'Connor. I'm the Support Services Senior Administrator for Department of Family Services. Within Support Services does reside child care licensing. I just wanted to make sure that I was here to answer any questions that may have come up in regards to licensing. In child care licensing, we really lean on local ordinance to be able to have local jurisdiction regarding zoning or covenants or any of those kind of contractual obligations. And so there's not really any concern regarding our rules or whether there would be a conflict with our rules in regards to this bill. So if there's questions about that, the department doesn't have any concerns there, and happy to answer any questions about childcare licensing.
Any questions for Ms. O'Connor? Senator Barlow?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just to clarify, this only deals with a property restriction, but what I think I also heard you say is there may be ordinances within a city that restrict activities, including potentially this. So, Mr. Chairman, I guess I'll let Roxanne answer that, but maybe this bill isn't broad enough, because maybe we actually have to say cities can't restrict this potential use either without good cause or something. Anyway, would you go ahead, please? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And Ms. O'Connor, Senator Barlow, I'm just going to interject slightly. You might be thinking about health and safety regulations about things like fences and setbacks and not on a busy street. And so Ms. O'Connor, if you can answer that question.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Barlow, you're correct. So in our rules, anything that is local jurisdiction regarding zoning, we're going to lean on those localities and their specific requirements because they are different in different jurisdictions, and we want to be respectful of that. And so really our rules are pretty simple, and we say, that childcare providers have to follow any of the local ordinances. We don't specifically refer to covenants in our rules. That would be more at the, the neighborhood level, that those types of things would have to be discussed. Mr. Chairman, like you referenced, really our rules are around health and safety. So playgrounds, staff ratios, square footage, those types of requirements.
Okay. Ms. O'Connor, thank you very much. Stand by. Who else would like to address the committee? We're going to be short of time before we know it because we're going in at 9. So Ms. Duncan, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Shelley Duncan, representing Wonder School, a child care advocacy. The child care crisis in Wyoming affects families and their financial well-being. We're short over 7,580 child care seats, and the economic impact is over $271.5 million. The bill simply clarifies that child care services are classified as a residential use rather than a home business. You still have, HOAs still have the right to not allow them. This does not take their ability away. The scenario is not exclusive to Wyoming. Several other states have already acknowledged the significance of home-based child care, has enacted legislation to tackle these challenges. The legislation has grown significantly since COVID. During COVID, many centers, large centers, closed down. And so states took the proactive measures to pass even more restrictive legislation for this, so that, because parents had to find childcare in order to continue to work. The economic impact of this on home-based daycare can't be overstated. They play a vital role in supporting our local economies, providing essential services to working parents, and by stifling the growth of this through over-regulation. HOAs not only hinder entrepreneurship, but sometimes they limit childcare options for families, over-exasperating an already strained childcare system. The biggest issue at hand is one of consistency and fairness in regulations. While state laws often permit the operation of home-based daycares, they conflict with the arise of when HOAs impose additional restrictions. Now, remember, the bill says only on those that are silent. So we do not support the amendment that narrowly passed in the House. It was 3130, or 3130, I think it was. Makes this simple definition exclusive to HOAs formed after July 1st. It's not so much that the notice is necessary given away. The bill was written allowing the HOAs that are silent to decide for themselves. However, if there was a simple 10 to 15 days notification that the daycare and the HOA was sent to the HOA president, we'd be supportive as a courtesy to let the whole neighborhood and the HOA know. Sent to the president, we'd be supportive. We're also, recently were made aware that there is one community of 55 years of age and older here in Cheyenne. I thought that was only in Arizona, but there is one here in Cheyenne. We'd be supportive of an amendment to not have childcare in those neighborhoods either. And that's all I have to say.
Any questions for Ms. Duncan? Senator Landon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to the former representative, this is interesting ground that you're on. Your former profession, still profession, and then working a bill that kind of goes counter to some of the real estate concerns. We have a 55 plus too. It's right in my backyard, up in the center part of the state. So I went immediately to that. You addressed that, but how does this work on the ground? If we pass a bill like this, I'm trying to work it through my mind how it works with ordinances locally. Does it give better leverage for somebody to go if we've got a silence on a HOA, for example? Does that give me better leverage to go to the city council and say, because of this, I should be able to open a daycare.
No, it doesn't affect,
Representative Duncan, or
thank you,
Ms.
Mr. Chairman.
Duncan.
Senator Landon, it doesn't change your local laws. Your local zoning, your local, all those are in place. It's only about your HOA and what your HOA says and is silent. And if you want to say, nope, we don't want that, and they're silent on this issue, you have every right to go to your HOA. You have whatever your threshold is for voting, whether it's 2/3 or majority. You can decide and say, nope, we don't want one.
Okay. Thank you.
Did I see somebody down here? Anything? Anybody else? Thank you, Representative Duncan. Let's get the next person. I'm worried we're gonna run out of time. Yes, ma'am. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, and I will be very quick. My name is Micah Richardson. I'm with the Wyoming Women's Foundation, and we have been in support of this bill as well. However, we don't love the amendment either. The restrictions that would come based on having this go into effect this year on any new covenants is not opening it up the way that we had hoped it would. And so I'm just going to leave it at that unless you have questions.
Okay. Any questions? And would you say your name again? I'm sorry.
Sure. Micah Richardson.
Richardson. Thank
Yep,
you,
with
Ms.
Wyoming
Richardson.
Women's Foundation.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Ms. Richardson? Thank you so much. Who's next? Hi there. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, committee members. My name is Amber Leba. I'm the Vice President of the Greater Cheyenne Chamber of Commerce, and I'm here to speak on this bill briefly. We are neutral on the amendment that was offered on the House side, but as of right now, we don't support this bill. We will be supportive of this bill with the amendments offered by Ms. Duncan. We do believe that it's very important to include a notice. You know, from our standpoint, we believe if somebody decides to purchase a home in a neighborhood that has HOAs, it is only fair to let that HOA and the neighbors in that neighborhood know if you're planning to, offer this daycare service. So we would like to see that added as well as the exemption for the 55 and older communities, and we would be supportive of the bill. And with that, I would stand for any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Ms. Leba? Any questions? Thank you very much. Ms. Erbekite, I can detect you're heading our way. Welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Lori Erbekite with the Wyoming Realtors. First, it's important that you understand that HOA covenants are a contract between private property owners. And quite frankly, we don't believe the state has any business interfering in those private contracts. However, as the bill is written currently, with the amendment, we'll live with it. And so for some of you that live on large ranches where you can't even see your neighbor's house, this may seem like a foreign concept to you, that neighbors would get together and actually agree on what they want their neighborhood to look like. And that's what covenants do. Again, private contract between private individuals. No state needs to be involved in that. However, when you live in a city or a municipality and your side yard setbacks are as small as 7 feet, which means there's only 14 feet between you and your neighbor, and you may live on a cul-de-sac that has 7 houses around the circle. Picture 10 families picking up 10 children all at the same time and how you're gonna get in and out of your driveway. So there are issues, there are real issues. We think that interfering with private contracts is not the place of the state. I did do a lot of research on different covenants, and I did offer an amendment that was not adopted in the House that would have required a 60-day notice. 10 to 15-day notice it's polite, but it's not going to do any good. If you want to amend covenants in most of the HOAs, you have to give 30 days notice before you can have the meeting. We heard testimony that in some HOAs, it requires 90% to change your covenants. Most of them that I found were 2/3 of the people in the association had to vote to change covenants. So it's not as simple as just saying, oh, let's all get together and decide we don't want a daycare. No, it's a process, and it's a legal process because those covenants have been filed with the county clerk and they are enforceable. So I did a lot of research, and what I found mostly was things like here in Cheyenne, there's a sweetgrass subdivision, and it simply says residential property shall be used and occupied as residential home sites only. Residential property owners shall have full enjoyment of their residential property. They thought residential meant just that. This bill fundamentally changes the definition of residential. Now, with the third reading amendment that put it future development's okay, we can live with that because now people know. But the people that wrote these covenants and agreed to these covenants and moved into those subdivisions thinking that they would have the peaceful enjoyment of their property and not have a traffic jam at 5 o'clock every afternoon, they don't have any way of saying, no, I don't like that idea. So we think that covenant was fine. I also asked for a 60-day notice so that the homeowner association, if they indeed wanted to be more specific, could. I found a covenants out of Campbell County that I particularly liked. And I mean, it started off with saying no part of the residential properties shall be used or caused to be used for any commercial use, blah, blah, blah. But then it said home-based occupations such as Mary Kay, Avon, Tupperware, internet-based business daycare centers with less than 10 clients and no employees will not be prohibited. So that's where I came with the language that moving it from 15 down to 10 and then giving notice so that the people that live in those subdivisions, if the state decides that they're going to interfere in private contracts, could actually do something about it. So we're okay with the bill the way it stands today. If the third reading amendment, section 2, goes away, we will be very opposed to the state interfering in private contracts. And I'd be happy to try to answer any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Oberkite? Any questions, Senator Barlow?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I heard examples of allowances for something similar to this. And in your knowledge and years of in this, are there ones that specifically exclude this type of activity in a covenant-based, in a covenant? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Oberkite.
Mr. Chairman, and I did spend last weekend, not this last one, the one before, researching, and I found none that said absolutely no daycares. I found none that said that. What I found was no business or commercial use. What I found was the majority said residential use only.
Senator Bonner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I appreciate the discussion here. It's, thinking about, where I live, which has one of these covenants, in fact, it didn't have the exact same, restrictions, but, there's folks who do operate at home businesses.
At the rate you're going with having children, you're going to be violating this just by living.
Well, that's a scary thought there. So, yeah, but it's real. I mean, the challenges that this bill is attempting to address is real. And it's unfortunate that, neighbors can't get along. That's why you have, covenants, I suppose. That's why you have ordinances if you live in town. And as a rancher, I completely understand. I mean, I used to live in town here in Cheyenne when I was stationed at the base. So it's not a difficult concept, I think, even for a rancher to wrap his mind around. So, I mean, do you not have any sympathy whatsoever for the issue that Representative Yen is trying to address? Because it's very real also. And I think that, as you stated with your own testimony, you've already limited it to 10 children, which I think gave an example that, that should be sufficient to ensure that others' property are not negatively interfered with. And so, seeing as how you did get that one amendment through, why would you not be okay with the retroactive portion of Section 2?
Mr. Chairman, I am certainly sympathetic to families needing daycare. Absolutely. I raised 2 children. I worked the whole time they were being raised, so I had to find daycare as well. And I am certainly sympathetic to that. That does not eliminate the fact that this bill is interfering in private contracts that homeowners have come together to address. I just question why the state has a place in this whole discussion. Local ordinances control via zoning, and that's fine. But to retroactively change the definition, the basic definition of residential use? I'm sorry, it's private property right that I just can't get past that. Yes, I have sympathy for parents looking for daycare. Is this gonna really fix it anyway? I question that.
Thank you, Ms. Overkite. Anybody else from Ms. Overkite? Thank you, Ms. Overkite.
Thank you.
Mr. Lindholm, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's tough to follow Ms. Urbicate. My name is Tyler Lindholm.
Well, you don't have to.
I don't have to. I'll be very quick, Mr. Chairman. I'm the State Director for Americans for Prosperity here in the state of Wyoming. And I'll just be very brief. Some of the best economic development the state of Wyoming has ever done has been by not spending any money and by doing regulatory reform. And that's what this legislation attempts to do. We're very much on and in favor of the legislation, especially if you were to remove the House amendment that is currently in there. We're not in favor of the Duncan amendments. We're not in favor of the Urbicate amendments. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lindholm. Questions? Thank you very, well, Senator Landon.
Sounds like the former chairman doesn't like amendments, I'll tell you that.
He never did, as I recall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Lindholm. Mr. Black, welcome. Trying to figure out your angle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Rob Black. I'm often come before, or not often, sometimes come before some of you in an official capacity as a state employee, but today I'm solely representing myself as a private citizen, and it's an honor to visit with you about this bill. I'm totally opposed to it. I live in a subdivision in Cheyenne. We've had covenants since 1979. At least since 2001, they have stated no commercial use of property. I appreciate Ms. Urbicite's comments about the traffic. We have fairly narrow streets. We have very little parking. None of us, when we moved into that subdivision, would have contemplated any kind of commercial operation next door, much less with all the traffic. You would have at least twice a day, plus parents coming and getting kids at different times of the day for doctor appointments or things like that. But moreover, Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1 of the U.S. Constitution states that no state shall pass any law that infringes or impairs the obligation of contracts. It's in the U.S. Constitution. And our state Supreme Court has multiple times upheld that HOAs and the covenants they have with their residents are private contracts. Prancing Antelope versus Saratoga Inn Overlook, Star Valley Ranch Association versus Daley, Goglio versus Star Valley Ranchers, multiple cases where the Wyoming Supreme Court has upheld that these are private contracts. And as earlier testimony said, the state now, if this bill passes, is interfering, is impairing with the obligation of the contracts that we have with our HOA. And it's not that, I'll just speak for myself, but I'm not against helping out the daycare industry, but forcing them into HOAs with covenants that say no commercial use is not good policy. There are other ways to help the daycare industry. You can subsidize daycares. You can establish daycare operations. And I just Googled this the other day. You can encourage businesses to offer daycare. You can encourage businesses to help people, to encourage or allow workers to work from home. That would help the daycare problem a lot. But if there's suddenly a desert in one industry, the state shouldn't step in and decide, oh, all of a sudden that industry is now a proper residential use of property. What's next? What's tattoo artists, dog groomers? Where's the next desert where the state has to come in and decide, now that industry is a residential use? So those are my main points. Whether you amend it or not, the whole bill is a bad idea. As we heard on the House side from some of the representatives, it's unconstitutional.
Thank
With that,
you.
I'll stand for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Black. Questions for Mr. Black? Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not a constitutional scholar, so I'm not going to go down that road. But I am interested how often you, in your 1979, how often your community has changed their covenants or actually had to respond to something specific in a commercial setting. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Black.
Mr. Chairman and Senator Barlow, I believe the 2001 change was the only time since the subdivision was created in 1979. So I don't know what the wording was beforehand, and I don't think the changes were to address commercial use. My hunch is that that has stayed the same, the reference to a prohibition of commercial use of any of the residents. We're right now in the process of revising the covenants for a number of reasons, just to bring them up to date and to clarify some things. But we're almost at the end of that process now. It looks like whether or not this bill goes through, we better get in there and put specifically, we better address daycare. But again, with the current reading of the bill, I'm not so sure that would matter after July 1. It feels like with the amendment after July 1, it doesn't matter what your covenants say, daycares would become a part of our, what is currently, uniformity in the neighborhood. That would alter the uniformity. It could also potentially affect property values down the road.
Thank you, Mr. Black. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we'll just continue this on Thursday. I appreciate your indulgence, and committee needs a little time to get to our seats. I think there are probably people in this room that want to testify, sir, so I'm just going to continue it over, and we'll start Thursday, tentatively planning to start at 8 o'clock in the morning. Thank you very much. We're adjourned. I'm not going to try to rush that. Sure. Oh, no, just boners is.